My wife died 8 years ago. Last month, I found out she never died. 8 years ago, I buried my wife. I stood at her grave. I placed a white rose on her coffin. I watched the dirt fall. I heard it hit the wood. I rebuilt my life. Slowly. Painfully. I raised our daughter alone. I learned to sleep in an empty bed. I learned to cook for one. I learned to stop looking for her face in crowds. Last month, I got a phone call. The voice on the other end said 6 words that collapsed every single thing I had built. "Sir, your wife is alive. And well." My hands went cold. My vision blurred. And the first thought that entered my mind was not joy. It was not relief. It was pure, absolute terror. Because if she never died, then who did I bury? To understand what happened, you need to understand who Sarah was. And who we were. We met in 2009. I was 26. She was 24. She was a nurse. The kind of nurse patients actually remembered. The kind who stayed late, not because she had to, but because she couldn't leave someone alone in the dark. That was Sarah. She had this laugh. I know everyone says their person had a special laugh. But hers started silent. Like her whole body was laughing before the sound came out. We got married in 2011. Small wedding. 40 people in her parents' backyard. She wore her grandmother's earrings. I cried before she even walked down the aisle. By 2013, we had a daughter. Lily. Named after the flower Sarah had tattooed on her left wrist. Life was good. Genuinely good. Not perfect. We argued about money. About time. About all the small things couples argue about. But underneath all of it there was this foundation. Solid. Real. Or so I thought. In late 2014, Sarah started changing. Not dramatically. Not in a way I can point to and say there. That was the moment. She became quiet in a different way. She started taking longer drives alone. She stopped answering her phone when I called during her shifts. She started sleeping with her back to me. I asked her. Of course I asked her. She said she was stressed at work. She said one of her patients had died and it was affecting her. She said she just needed space. I gave her space. I wish I hadn't. February 3, 2015. That date is burned into me. I don't have to try to remember it. It just lives there. In the front of my mind. Always. It was a Tuesday. I was home with Lily. She was 18 months old. Sarah was on the night shift. At 2:47 in the morning, my phone rang. It was a detective. He told me there had been an accident on Highway 9. A car had gone off the road and into the river. The car was registered in Sarah's name. He said they had recovered a body. He said based on ID found at the scene and the vehicle registration, they believed it was my wife. I remember standing in my kitchen. Lily was asleep in the next room. The refrigerator was humming. And I was standing completely still, holding the phone, thinking, this is not real. This cannot be real. The next 72 hours are a blur. I remember faces. My mother's face. Sarah's mother's face. I remember paperwork. I remember someone handing me coffee I never drank. The body had been in the water for several hours. The current. The cold. The impact. The medical examiner said identification was difficult. But there was her car. her ID, her wedding ring, her hospital badge, a tattoo on the left wrist, a lily. The case was closed. She was gone. And I spent the next 8 years of my life learning to believe that grief is not what they show in movies. In movies, people cry dramatically. They fall to their knees. They have a moment. And then slowly, beautifully, they heal. Real grief is more like a permanent low hum of wrongness. Like wearing shoes on the wrong feet. Every single day. For years. I kept working. I had to. Lily needed me. My mother helped. Sarah's parents helped. Everyone gathered around this tiny little girl who had no idea why her mama wasn't coming home. Lily used to ask about her mother every single night. Where did mama go, daddy? And I would say, mama went to heaven, baby. And she would say, is it far? And I would say, very far. And she would say, can we call her? How do you answer that? By the time Lily was 4, she stopped asking. Children adapt. It's the saddest and most beautiful thing about them. She made peace with the absence. She drew pictures of her mother from a photograph on our mantle. A woman she had no real memory of. A ghost in a frame. I dated once. Around 2019. A woman named Claire. She was kind. Patient. Smart. She knew about Sarah. She was understanding. But 6 months in, she sat me down and said something I'll never forget. She said, "You're still married to her. I can feel it." I didn't argue. I let Claire go. Because she was right. And now, knowing what I know, maybe there was a reason I could never truly let go. Maybe some part of me always knew. March 14th of this year. I was at work. I was looking at spreadsheets. Eating a sandwich. My cell phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I nearly let it go to voicemail. I answered. The voice was a woman's. Professional. Careful. She said she was a social worker from a county I'd never heard of 3 states away. She said my name. My full name. She asked if I was indeed married to Sarah. I said was. Past tense. I said my wife died in 2015. There was a pause on her end. And then she said, very carefully, "Sir, I need you to sit down. I'm calling because a woman has come into our facility. She's been through a significant trauma. She has no identification. But we've run her fingerprints through the national database. And they match your wife's medical records on file." I said nothing. She kept talking. Her voice was distant. Like I was underwater. She said the woman was alive. She said she was safe. She said she had been found in a rural area. She said she appeared to have been living in isolation for some time. I heard all of these words, and what came out of my mouth was, "That's not possible." I went to her funeral. And she said gently, carefully, "Sir, I think you need to come here. I want to tell you I jumped on a plane with pure joy. That I cried happy tears all the way there. That's not what happened. I sat in my car in the parking lot at work for 45 minutes. Just sat there. Because here's what nobody tells you about news like this, it isn't just joy. It's an earthquake. If Sarah was alive, then what was the last 8 years? If Sarah was alive, who did I bury? If Sarah was alive, did she choose to leave? That last question. That last question was the one I couldn't stop turning over. Because accidents don't fake fingerprints. Bodies don't get replaced by coincidence. If her fingerprints were in that database and she was alive, then someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make me believe she was dead. And the list of people who could do that was very short. I called my mother. She cried. I called Sarah's mother. She went silent for a long time. Then she said, "Go. Go right now." I didn't tell Lily. Not yet. You don't tell a 9-year-old her dead mother might be alive. Until you know for certain what you're dealing with. I booked the first flight out. 4-hour flight. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat in seat 22C staring at the back of the headrest in front of me, trying to decide which truth I was more afraid of. That it wasn't really her. Or that it was. The facility was a crisis center attached to a hospital. Clean. Quiet. Fluorescent lights. The social worker, her name was Dr. Reyes, met me at the door. She walked me down a hallway. She briefed me. She said the woman had been found 6 weeks ago. She'd been living in a remote property about 40 miles from the nearest town. She was physically healthy. Malnourished but stable. Psychologically, she was being assessed. She had refused to give her name for the first 2 weeks. She had refused to talk about her past. But slowly, she had started to open up. Dr. Reyes told me to be prepared. That this would be overwhelming for both of us. She told me not to pressure her. She told me whatever I felt in that room to stay calm. I nodded. I lied. I had no idea what I was capable of feeling in that room. She opened a door. It was a small room. 2 chairs. A window with soft light. And sitting in one of those chairs, was a woman who looked like my wife. Thinner. Her hair was longer, mostly gray now. There were lines on her face that hadn't been there before. Her hands were in her lap. She was looking at the window. And then she turned. And I knew. I knew before she spoke. I knew before she stood up. I knew before the tears started, both of ours, almost simultaneously. It was Sarah. Older. Changed. Worn down by years I knew nothing about. But it was her. She said my name. Just my name. Like a question and an apology and a prayer all at once. And I didn't know what to do, so I just stood there in the doorway of that small room. And I said the only thing I could think of, I went to your funeral. It took days for the full story to come out. In 2014, when she began pulling away, she had discovered something at work. She was a nurse in a cardiac unit. She had noticed irregularities. Medications being switched. Incorrect dosages being administered. She had done what you're supposed to do. She reported it internally. Nothing happened. She reported it again. To a supervisor. 2 days later, she was pulled into a meeting and told her performance reviews were being reconsidered. She had stumbled onto something she wasn't supposed to find. And the people involved were not small people. Over the following months, she began collecting evidence. She was scared. She was in over her head. She made contact with an investigator, someone who had been looking into the same network for years. This investigator told her something that changed everything. He said, "These people don't threaten. They make problems disappear." She didn't tell me. She said she didn't tell me because she was protecting me. Protecting Lily. She believed that if they discovered she'd been collecting evidence, they wouldn't just come for her. They'd come for all of us. So she made a plan. With the investigators' help she staged it. The car. The river. The body. The body was a Jane Doe from a case the investigator had access to. A woman with no family, no identification, who had died in an unrelated incident weeks before. A lily tattoo was added post-mortem to match Sarah's. The investigator had the kind of access that makes you realize how fragile official records really are. And just like that, Sarah disappeared. And a stranger was buried in her place. And I spent 8 years grieving a woman who was hiding. She went into a protected location, unofficial, underground. She was supposed to testify. She was supposed to help bring these people down. But the case stalled. The investigator was killed in what was ruled a car accident in 2017. The network scattered. And Sarah was left with nothing. No identity. No case. No way home. Too afraid to surface. Not knowing if they were still watching. Not knowing if coming home meant bringing danger back to me. To Lily. So she stayed gone. For 8 years. Living in the margins of a country she used to belong to. Until 6 weeks ago, when she collapsed on a rural road from exhaustion. And a passing trucker called an ambulance. And the hospital ran her prints. And everything came undone. I want to give you a neat ending. I want to tell you we held each other and everything was okay. That Lily ran into her mother's arms and we're back in our house, a family again. But real life doesn't work like that. The truth is I don't know who Sarah is anymore. And she doesn't know who I am. We are strangers who share a past. Strangers who share a daughter. Lily knows now. We told her together. She cried for 2 hours, and then she walked up to Sarah very slowly and touched her face like she was checking if she was real. And then she just held her. As a father watching that moment, there are no words that are big enough. But in my own heart I'm still standing in that doorway. Still saying I went to your funeral. Because grief doesn't just reverse. Because 8 years don't just disappear. Because somewhere in a cemetery there is a grave with my wife's name on it. And underneath that ground is a woman nobody ever claimed. We owe her something. Her real name. Her real story. That work is ongoing. As for Sarah and me, we're in therapy. Separately and together. We're taking it slowly. Painfully slowly. Some days I look at her and I feel everything. Some days I look at her and I feel nothing. Which is worse? She says she understands. She says she'll wait as long as it takes. I asked her once in one of our sessions if she ever regretted it. She was quiet for a long time. And then she said, every single day. And I'd probably do it again. Because you and Lily were alive. And that was all that mattered. I don't know what to do with that answer. I'm still figuring it out. I'm telling you this story because someone asked me to. A friend said, this needs to be heard. People need to know that the world is stranger and more painful and more miraculous than they think. I think that's right. I also think there are people watching this right now who are carrying something. A loss they've never fully accepted. A door they were told was closed forever. A version of a person they loved who disappeared for 1,000 different reasons. I don't know what's on the other side of your closed door. I don't know if what you lost is coming back. Mine happened to come back in the strangest, most complicated way imaginable. But I do know this, the truth, no matter how long it takes, has a way of surfacing. Like a body in a river. Like a woman with no name at a hospital 3 states away. Like a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon that starts with 6 impossible words. Take care of yourselves. Hold the people you love a little tighter tonight. And remember, you never actually know the full story. Not ever.